Hello, everyone, and welcome back to
Super Stache Bros.
And so today is another annual weekly movie watch list. Every week we pick 5 movies and we watch them throughout the week, and then at the end we review them and tell you our thoughts. So this week's was a mixed bag. Some were really good and some were really bad.
It was my choice this week to pick the movies, so a very mixed bag.
Very mixed bag. So 5 movies. Why don't you start us off with one?
Okay, I am going to start off and go ahead and just pull the Band-Aid off of this week, because there was one movie this week. I will say, as you watch this, you're probably going to be like, he likes everything. And, I'm pretty easy to please when it comes to movies. Mainstream movies will kind of get me sometimes. If they're just too generic, too overdone, they will get me. And the only reason I really watched this movie was because of doing this right here. I probably would have skipped it otherwise, because I just had a bad feeling about it. But we tried to watch Fantasy Island.
The new one from Blumhouse.
New one from Blumhouse. And I have to say, as much as I don't want to badmouth anything, this was just not a good movie. I did not like this movie. I was bored. This one fell asleep during the movie 3 different times, and I had to tell him that we're watching this to actually talk about a review on it. And it just, man,
So, going off that, for people that don't know, Fantasy Island was a really popular TV show back in the 70s, and the TV show is really good. It presents a lot of new, unique ideas, like people's wishes, if they came true. So, when it was first announced, I was kind of like, oh, that'd be cool, because they're making it into a horror film. The series wasn't really a horror series per se. So it was like, they're turning it into a horror film, so that could be interesting. And then it just was...
There's really not a lot to talk about.
It's very generic.
It is one of the most generic movies.
PG-13.
Yeah, and I watched Countdown, and I was okay with Countdown. It was actually good. I've watched, some of these other that when they come out, they look very generic and everything, but they're entertaining.
So that's what I thought it was going to be like Truth or Dare, which is the one they did last year. It's very generic, PG-13, but it was actually really enjoyable.
Yeah, it was an enjoyable movie.
I was surprised. I was like, it's going to be effing terrible. But I was like, it held my interest. It held up the promises it made, which was just a mindless, PG-13 horror film, and it did it really well, actually.
And even, parts of it where you're like, oh, that's kind of laughable. It was laughable, but you're like...
In a cheesy way.
In a cheesy way. You're like, okay, I accept this for what it is, and I enjoyed watching it. I cannot stress, I did not enjoy watching this movie at all. I watched it like a trooper to get through it so that I could talk about it right now. And I'm not even going to say a lot about it, because you can watch it. I did not like this movie.
It was...
This is the first movie that we went through where I'm just like, we kind of gave a little bit of a bad review to Body at Brighton Rock, but Brighton Rock had a lot of positives going for it. This movie had a lot of money poured into it. And it just goes to show you cannot just pour money into a movie. And
more money does not equal talent.
No.
And that's the thing that pisses me off. I think the most about this movie is they spent literally over $20 million on this piece of shite. And there are scripts and writers out there that have so many good, really good ideas that aren't even getting a second look at. Because they're like, well, why would we take this really unique, original ideas all these unknown authors, have, and let's just take something that's already been done before in the 70s and just dumb it down and put it out, $20 million out to the world.
Not to mention, this movie basically just ripped off the name of the old television show. and kind of was like, oh, this is going to take place on an island. That's about as close as it got to the television show. So
it was horrible.
It was a very horrible movie.
And it's starting to make me lose a little respect for Blumhouse. Because normally Blumhouse was really good. I mean, Halloween, the new Halloween they came out with. But then just lately they've been putting out a lot of dumbed down, stupid cash grabs like Fantasy Island.
Definitely a cash grab movie. This movie was just, I'm sure they probably made their money off of it. But, a lot of times it's like, I hate to say it, it's kind of like those Transformers movies. It's like, yeah, you're going to make your money off of it.
But at what cost?
At what cost to keep...
the entertainment industry.
What cost to humanity do you keep doing this to people? And the thing is, they don't care. And this movie was a definite...
And it's very clear they don't care.
So
it's like they didn't even reread the script. So moving on from that travesty... one that I really surprisingly enjoyed, it's a brand new one. It's Justice League Dark, what's the
Apokolips.
Apokolips War. I'm not actually really big on animated films, especially animated superhero films for the most part, because I feel like they're all just the same, superheroes, but I was surprised. It was extremely violent, and they killed off a lot of people. It was like Game of Thrones of Justice League, and so it held my interest all the way through. It's
from the Dark series of Justice League, and I have to say, DC animated movies are absolutely top notch. I love them. So
live action?
Well, I mean, we're not gonna knock the live action, but I'm just saying, DC animated is what Marvel live action would be. Mm-hmm. It's like there's, top notch and everything like that. And I love this Dark series because it's really taking these comic books and taking a very unflinching look. This movie was rated R and definitely deserved to be rated R. Lots of blood and violence and everything like that, but I mean, it wasn't like just to be violent. It definitely fit into it. Brought back one of the characters that I love, which is Constantine, and which he's showing up more and more in their animated films, and I hope that pushes along, that we get something more Constantine along the way. But very good movie. And DC's also really good with getting top-notch voice talent for their movies, so very high production values on everything. The artwork was really well done, and it was an amazing story that they just couldn't do outside of the animated world.
So yeah,
just couldn't do it.
It had a really good story. The characters were good. A lot of shocks in terms of who dies, and just a lot of very unflinching portrayal of it. It's like, they're the good guys, they have to win, and all this stuff every time they battle. I was like, not always. But they left room for a sequel, I think, so I'm actually looking forward to whatever they put out next, because it was really good, and really that's all I can say without spoiling it. It was just a really good animated film.
You really need to watch it. And like I said, I kind of chose the movies this week, and so that was definitely one of my choices. I know that he's not a big superhero, animated superhero.
I love superhero films. I'm not big on animated films in general, though.
But, it's kind of like when you see something like this, you're like, oh, wow, okay. I can kind of see the value of... Sometimes animated, you can just do a lot of stuff you just couldn't do, which might as well go ahead and segue into the next movie, because it was another animated film that I picked this week, and that was Mortal Kombat Legends: Scorpion's Revenge.
I love this one too.
This is for everyone who grew up loving Mortal Kombat. This is the movie that we've waited for a really long time, that they just did not hold back on. So, I mean...
The story was good, the characters were good, the artwork was good, the violence was extreme, they didn't hold back. And, I've never been a big video game person, so I never really played Mortal Kombat. I played the newest one that came out, and that one had, the best story arc I've ever seen in anything.
The best story arc in a video game. Mortal Kombat 11, if you just need to play story mode, and you're like,
really
that's
good.
better than 90% of the movies I've seen in the last 5 years.
And it's like, why don't they just take that and adapt it for the film?
Kind of hoping. You've got the story.
It's so good. But, so I enjoyed the characters. It had a really gripping story arc. The emotional beats were really touching. And it made me love Scorpion more. So
Scorpion's a cool character. And they fit a lot of little Easter eggs in there if you are a Mortal Kombat fan and everything like that. And they added in some of the newer aspects from the later games, but it's kind of like a retelling of the original Mortal Kombat like tournament and everything like that. They even fit brutalities in there. I mean, I thought it was a very, very well done movie. And like I said, another just like, wow, this is not for kids. It is for the adults who grew up loving Mortal Kombat. And it's the Mortal Kombat movie we waited for a very long time to see.
And it was worth it because it was really good. And again, I'm looking forward to whatever they put out next because they kind of left room for a sequel. So I'm excited. So moving away from anime, I guess, into
animated.
Move into one of my favorite this week, and it was surprising because we just discovered it on a whim late at night on Amazon Prime. It's called Living Dark: The Story of Ted the Caver. And at first, because we were just scrolling through, like there's not really nothing to watch, like Living Dark, and so we'll start from the beginning. For everyone that doesn't know, Ted the Caver was a very popular urban legend on the internet in back the early days of the internet, like 2000. And it was these journal entries written by Ted the Caver. And he discovers this new cave system and he starts digging into it and all these strange things start happening. And so, the journal entries just end abruptly and we never really find out what happens to him. But it was a story that gained a lot of popularity on the internet, and I love it. I've read it several times just because the writing is so good and the story, and it's really actually very creepy. And so we were just scrolling through, and it's like Living Dark is like the story of Ted the Caver. I was like, I didn't know they made a movie about this. And so I was like, oh, let's give it a watch. And so at first I was like, this is probably one of those cheap-ass looking films someone made in their backyard. So I was like, well, we'll give it a shot. And we actually watched it, and it was surprisingly really good.
I mean, it was a low-budget film and everything, but like they done very well with what they had. The acting was good in it.
The story was good. And even where they continued off where they had to kind of go off on their own from what they the legend. The first two halves of the movie is just a shot-for-shot remake of the actual story. But then at the end of that, where it leaves off in the original story, they continue on and actually tell you what happened to Ted. And so I actually kind of enjoyed their own little spin on it.
That part was probably the weaker part of the movie because, but by this time you're already, I will say...
You're in too deep.
Yeah, you're in too deep. This movie, the first time you watch it especially, I did notice, we watched it again with some friends because I wanted them to experience Ted the Caver because Ted the Caver elicits
extreme
claustrophobia.
So if you've ever seen The Descent, that movie kind of makes you feel tired. This one's amped up even more to like 100, and it's so because literally you're sitting there and you're like, oh, I'm squirming, I can't stand it.
I was really squirming in my seat, and then to watch it with some friends
that was funny
that were like literally covering their face, and we're like, you have to watch this and everything. They done a really, really good job on that aspect of it and everything. So, of course, like the second time you watch it, you know what's going to happen, and it's not. But that first time you watch it, you're right there with Ted, and you're like, what are you doing? You're crazy. Mm-hmm. But in a good way. Like, this was like a really good find, and like, I think it's a very, very good movie that just is not well known,
It's not. Like I said, we found it on Amazon Prime, which reminds me, we're going to back up a little, and I'll tell you where to find all those movies.
Forgot. Sorry.
Which, a lot of them are the same place, because all three of the first ones we mentioned are new releases. So, Fantasy Island, Scorpion, Mortal Kombat, Scorpion, and Justice League. You can all buy them off Amazon Prime, YouTube, or any other streaming service for like $5.99. Highly recommend it for Justice League and Mortal Kombat, but I would highly recommend you don't waste your money on Fantasy Island and instead use it to buy yourself something nice.
Something good. You deserve it.
Fantasy Island is not something nice.
Don't subject your loved ones to this.
No, that's a movie you give to a friend if you hate them, but
or you want to break up with somebody.
Yeah, you break up into Fantasy Island. Or you want them to break up with you for showing you that horrible movie. It's like, this is what you think of our relationship. But going back to Living Dark, it's on Amazon Prime for free, and it was just one of those random finds. I was just scrolling through, and then I almost passed it. I was like, Living Dark, story of Ted the Caver. Oh, okay. But it's so weird because it was so good, and it was just, I never heard of it before because this movie's like from 2013, so it's pretty old. And it's like, I've never heard anything about it. And like, if you look on IMDb, it's only got like 400 votes for like the rating, they do. And so it's like, not many people have seen this, but it's actually.
And they're really missing out. This is a really good movie. I mean, and it's a good movie to subject your friends to and watch them squirm at this movie. Mm-hmm. This week, it's a hard mix match, and not going into the last one yet. But I have to say, like, Mortal Kombat was amazing, and the Justice League was amazing. Ted the Caver was probably my favorite movie. And like I said, like, probably 2 days after we initially watched it, we ended up showing it to some friends. And it's one of those things, when you love something, you share it with people. Mm-hmm. And we wanted to share those icky feelings because, there was one of our friends was like, you knew this would affect me. You knew this would do this to me. And I'm like, you can't. You've got to watch. You got to watch. Don't turn away.
So, if you like Prom, it is a good afternoon watch. It's really good if you're claustrophobic to make them squirm or anything. It's anxiety inducing, especially towards the end, because it's like, oh my god. But yeah, it's just one of those nice random gems that's on Amazon Prime, so I'd definitely give it a watch. Highly recommend it. Mm-hmm. Moving on to the last one that again, it was pretty good. It's another mainstream one, The Boy. I think a lot of people have heard it. It came out in theaters. It was pretty successful, but it's actually a really enjoyable. A lot of people turned away from it because the way it was marketed was very bad. It was marketed as just a cheesy, generic, haunting film, PG-13 rating. So a lot of people got turned off of it.
Kind of looked like a cheap Child's Play.
Kind of. Or a knockoff of Annabelle, because this came out after Annabelle. So I think a lot of people thought they were just cashing in on it. But it's actually really enjoyable. You got to give it a watch. It's not what you think it is.
It plays on that. It plays on you going in thinking it's a certain thing.
And then it turns it on its head and it's nothing what you expected. Mm-hmm. And so I think that I like that about the movie. It does, know you're going to go in with perceived notions of what it's going to be. And it's like, oh, actually, never mind. This is what it is. And so it was really good. This a little creepy moment. It's in this big Gothic style house. So I love Gothic horror when it takes place in like these big sprawling mansions. Creepy ass doll, Brahms.
And the lead actress is Maggie from The Walking Dead. She does a very good job.
Beautiful, of course.
Even though you keep yelling at her, follow the rules. So
the doll has a list of rules, and the parents they tell her, like, as long as you follow the rules, Brahm will be nice to you. And so, of course she's like, F this doll. And he's not nice to her when she doesn't follow it. And so you're kind of just like, just follow the damn rules and he'll leave you alone. So it's a nice little, I don't want to say ghost story. It's a nice little story that has a lot of twists and it doesn't go where you're expecting it to go, definitely. So it had a really, really nice wrap up, I thought. But yeah, it was actually just, it's not hurt from the PG-13 rating because it's not really about the violence or anything. So I definitely recommend it. It's a nice movie you can watch with the family. I would say, nothing in it that a 13-year-old can't handle. So
yeah, it was a good one. Definitely way less violent than even the 2 animated movies on our list this weekend, which was the most violent out of everything. And I mean, you can say thanks because I picked a pretty good week of movies. I mean, I knew Fantasy Island wasn't going to be good. It really did subject both of us to some torture.
I had a wonderful nap. So.
But besides that, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you give those movies a chance, except for Fantasy Island. And if you want to watch Fantasy Island, it's your funeral. But be sure to check down in the comments because we're going to have a list of movies that we're going to talk about next week so that you can go ahead and watch them and kind of chime in on what you thought about them. See if we're completely wrong or just give another take on things. And if you like this video, be sure to give it a like and give us a subscribe, So with that, I guess we'll say
I do.
I do.